Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one, we go over 5 wide receivers that I've identified as high-level sleeper candidates, as guys that are going, just in my mind, far too late in drafts. These guys have a lot more upside than I think they're currently being drafted at, and they're guys that I think are just a little bit too slept on. For the purposes of this video, I required these to be wide receivers drafted outside of the top 40 wide receivers. So if there's anybody you feel like I missed that was maybe just it might be just because they were drafted right before that, but if you have any questions about players I didn't bring up, any disagreements or anything, just let me know in the comments below. I love interacting with you guys there, and hopefully you guys find these videos useful and fun. I love doing these deep dives on some lesser known players. It's a lot more fun to, in my mind, to sort of dive deep and get to these guys that a lot of people don't see coming, because I think there's a lot of opportunity to really get a leg up over your league mates if you can hit on some of these guys that they probably weren't even thinking about going into the draft. So should be a lot of fun, and let's just get into it. And then yeah, any questions or comments, just let me know below. Thanks, guys. So I'm going to start things off with a player who just barely made the cut for me to classify him as a sleeper. Ricky Pearsall is a guy that I think is honestly just far too undervalued right now. He was drafted last year to be great. He was drafted in the late first round, and I think it's just really unfair to look at his rookie season as anything but a success, to be completely honest, when you take everything into consideration. He was dealing with a little bit of an injury going into training camp, so he missed a lot of training camp. And right when he was getting healthy, the dude got shot. Freak accident. It's not like he was off doing anything questionable or anything like that. He was just walking on the street in San Francisco. Got jumped for his watch, I believe. So just really bad luck there. Wrong place, wrong time. And that, in general, especially for anybody, it's going to be tough to come back from. But when you're a rookie coming into the NFL in a really complex system in San Francisco that they run with Kyle Shanahan, there's a lot of things to pick up in that offense. So it was already going to be tough for a rookie to come in and immediately contribute. Just think back a few years ago, Brandon Ayuk did not have a fantastic rookie year. Even his second year took a little bit for him to get going. So Brandon Ayuk's proven at this point, up until the injury last season, that he was an elite wide receiver in the NFL. So it's just tough. We've seen that already for wide receivers to adjust as a rookie. And he had a really tough situation ahead of him. He had a lot of target competition with Kittle, Ayuk, Debo on the roster. And again, he got very set back by injury there. And even with all of that, he still played really great down the stretch. We saw some flashes out of him. When his first came back, he caught a big long touchdown. Finished the last 2 weeks of the season with a 25 and a 16 half PPR scoring games. So back-to-back really great games to close out the season. And I think that's potentially a good sign for things to going forward here. On top of that, you have Debo Samuel gone from the roster, signing with the Washington Commanders. Brandon Ayuk, he's still hurt. Christian McCaffrey coming off of injury. Hopefully he can stay healthy all year, but that's certainly not necessarily likely, or guaranteed at least. And then George Kittle often injured himself. I know he was healthy all of last year, but it wouldn't be shocking at all to see CMC and Kittle both miss significant time at some point this season. So I think there's a very clear opportunity here for Ricky Pearsall to potentially step in and be the number one target in this offense. I like Juwan Jennings too. He's a talented player. I think he can be a quality wide receiver 3 or flex play for us in fantasy, but I don't think he has nearly the upside that Ricky Pearsall offers. At this point in Juwan Jennings' career, he's had enough opportunity to emerge as an elite talent. He just hasn't ever done it. But Ricky Pearsall still could do that. And being drafted as a wide receiver 42 off boards, I would feel pretty comfortable playing him in my flex right away. And then I think there's legit top 15 upside for him if things break right. Again, I think he's a really talented player. We didn't really get to see all of that potential last season just because of all the extenuating circumstances. And with the situation around him, there's a clear path towards him potentially being the number one target here in this offense. And if that's the case with Brock Purdy, who's a good quarterback, maybe not great, but in this system under Kyle Shanahan, there's going to be a lot of value out of the wide receiver position. We've seen it several years ago, or for several years in a row with Ayuk and Debo, and even last year, Juwan Jennings was great at times. There's going to be a lot of value in this offense, and Pearsall has a chance to be the main part of it in terms of the passing game. So I want a lot of him, super cheap and a ton of upside. So I'll be drafting a lot of Pearsall this year. Moving down a little bit lower in the rankings, we got Trey Harris, who's a guy that I really do want to talk about. I liked him a lot coming into the draft. He's a guy that I feel like can be a really talented field stretcher, a great contested catch guy. You can see the highlight picture we've got on the slide. He's just a really talented player. I think he slots in and is immediately the number 2 wide receiver on the roster in Los Angeles. Again, I think Glad McConkey's fantastic. I think he's going to be the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense, but this is an offense that I think could be a really high-scoring offense in general. You've got Justin Herbert, who's shown he can command lead a really high-end offense and support multiple high-end fantasy producers at the wide receiver position, especially if you look at over the back half of last season. They threw the ball a lot more than they did over the first half of the season. I think you're going to see a little bit of both here. I think a lot of that was because they couldn't necessarily run the ball very effectively with Dobbins and Gus Edwards, and they should be able to do that now with Amarian Hampton and Najee Harris. So I think they'll still want to be a pretty run-heavy team, but they'll want to certainly be efficient and stretch the field, use play action, and I think that caters really well to what Trey Harris can do well as a field stretcher, a contested catch guy. I'm going to give Justin Herbert a big target to throw to, and we've seen sort of this mold of wide receiver in Los Angeles before. You had several years in a row of consistent production between Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And I'm not saying either one of these players are perfect comps, but Ladd McConkey is sort of really filling that slot role great that Keenan Allen did for years. And I think Trey Harris can sort of just be their next Mike Williams. And Mike Williams had some top 10 seasons. He had some obviously spike production. And if we can just get a full season of Trey Harris healthy as the clear wide receiver 2 on this offense, a guy that I think is going to stretch the field really well, I think he's going to be like the perfect flex to have in your roster. Is going to be a really boom or bust kind of guy. But with this offense being as good as I think it's going to be, and with Trey Harris being as talented as I think he can be, I think we're going to see a lot more consistent production out of him than maybe we even got out of Mike Williams. So I think Trey Harris is a guy that I'm definitely targeting. He's the perfect guy to throw in your flex. I probably don't want to start him in my flex week 1 just because, he's a rookie. We want to see what his role looks like. But I think really early on in the season, Harris is going to emerge as a guy that we want to be at least considering starting every single week, and he's being drafted out to the top 50 at the position. So I like him a lot. Keep an eye on him. He's maybe a little bit lesser known than some of the other rookie wide receivers we'll talk about, and I like him quite a bit. So just keep an eye on him and don't forget about him this year. Next, we're going even deeper here. We got Cedric Tilman, who's a guy that I want to bring up, and he's a pretty popular sleeper across the industry, actually, but I really do like him, and I just feel like he deserves that praise and that recognition right now. We saw him sort of break out last season over a 4-week stretch. We saw him actually be the leading target in this offense over 4 weeks. He scored 3 touchdowns, had honestly 4 straight really good games for fantasy when the Browns made the move to trade Amari Cooper. And that was just immediately when Cedric Tilman finally was able to step into a full-time role in this offense. He was drafted in the 3rd round 2 years ago, so this is going to be his 3rd year in the NFL. So that's a pretty decent draft capital. Just watching him play as well, I think he's a legitimately good player. I don't think he's a guy that I think the reason he wasn't starting is because Amari Cooper's a really talented player, and that's why he was keeping Cedric Tilman off the field. But I do think Cedric Tilman is good enough to be a quality starting wide receiver in the NFL, and I just want to highlight that he was legitimately outpacing Jerry Jeudy in terms of targets, yardage, touchdown production during the 4 weeks where he was healthy prior to getting concussed near the end of the season. This concussion is kind of different than what you have with Chris Olave. This was the first major concussion Cedric Tillman's had in his career. I think generally him not playing over the back half of the year was just more due to this team not really having anything to play for, so why would they risk that? And all of the reports out of camp are that Cedric Tilman is the clear wide receiver 2 in this offense, or at least a clear starting wide receiver. So you've got Jeudy, you've got Tillman, maybe Deontay Johnson slots in the slot, but Cedric Tillman's going to be a full-time player in this offense, and being able to find a full-time player on a team that's going to have to throw the ball a ton, I think that in general they're able to throw the ball pretty effectively if they can just get any sort of quarterback production. I really do believe that the coaching staff there knows how to run an offense. It's just been a lack of talent at the quarterback position, and that's probably not getting fixed here. You're looking at a season of probably Kenny Pickett, maybe some Joe Flacco, maybe we see some Shedeur Sanders in there. It's not going to be a fantastic quarterback room by any means, and I think that's the reason why he's being drafted this late here. But there's also a clear path, at least, towards Cedric Tilman maybe just being the wide receiver 1 in this offense. He's the bigger body. He's definitely the guy that I would project to be at least a larger target in the red zone for this team, and he's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 62. You've got Jerry Jeudy going as the wide receiver 32, so a huge discrepancy there, even though at least during the 4 games that they both played together as the starters, Tilman was number 1 guy. I'm not saying I would take Tilman over Jeudy. We saw Jeudy do it over a longer time frame, but I think it's at least possible that Tilman comes in and is the wide receiver 1 on this offense. And I think it's just fair to say he's going to be a very usable asset, a guy that you can play as a solid wide receiver 3. Again, there's going to be a ton of volume in Cleveland just because this is a team that's going to need to throw the ball a lot. They're going to be trailing. They're probably not going to win very many games, and that results in a lot of passing volume, which, volume is king. I know it's not going to be super efficient because this offense isn't going to be very good. You're not going to get good quarterback play, but it will open up a lot of targets that Cedric Tilman can take advantage of, and I think it's just really tough to find players that possess full-time starting roles in any offense that are being drafted this late. So being drafted as the wide receiver 62, as a clear wide receiver 2 at worst full-time player on this team, I just feel like that's way too low. He's going to outperform that ADP for sure if he stays healthy, and I think there's a lot more upside beyond that. So I like him quite a bit this year. I'll definitely be targeting him, especially in deeper leagues. We're going to go even deeper here. We've got Pat Bryant, a third-round draft pick this last season by the Denver Broncos. Probably not a guy that people have really heard of too much, but he's someone that I definitely want to bring up. And I'm going to just start things off by asking you, just think about it for a second. Who's the wide receiver 2 on the Denver Broncos? I personally think there's at least a good to fair chance that it could be Pat Bryant this season. Denver's made it pretty clear over the last 2 years they've had plenty of opportunity to get Marvin Mims involved, and he's flashed at times, but no matter what he does, they've just made it pretty clear that Mims is not going to be a full-time player. He's got to use on manufactured touches. He'll run it deep, and he'll return kicks and stuff for them, but he's not a guy that they really want to make a full-time player, so I think there's at least a clear path here for the wide receiver 2 spot to be wide open in this offense. You had Devon Vele getting significant time in this offense last season. And he's not great at all. He's an old rookie, not drafted very high, didn't really do anything special. And we saw him have some games. He had a game with 9 targets last season. He had a game with 8 targets last season. He finished the year with 55. That's a lot of targets going to a guy who's really not all that good. Even beyond that, Cortland Sutton, not exactly a special player as a wide receiver 1. Like, there are far more dominant wide receiver 1s in the NFL. If you come into the NFL and you're like actually a really good player, you'll beat out Sutton for being the wide receiver 1 in the offense. Evan Ingram, some of the other supposed target competition in this offense, kind of looked washed last year. I actually like Evan Ingram this season, but there's at least a clear path towards him potentially not being all that good for fantasy or even that good for the Broncos this year. And on top of that, Sean Payton has been very vocal about how much he likes Pat Bryant. He's loved what he's seen in practice. Said he reminds him of Michael Thomas. I hate it when those player comps get used just because Michael Thomas obviously was a fantastic wide receiver, finished the year as a wide receiver 1 once, and I'm not going to say that can happen in this offense, but if you think about Michael Thomas, he was a guy that wasn't necessarily the most explosive player, didn't run a quick 40, wasn't exactly like a supreme athlete, but he was just a really crisp route runner and really specialized those like over the middle passes, those slant routes that Sean Payton loves to emphasize in his offense, and it's been made really clear and really evident so far in training camp that those are the same routes that Pat Bryant's going to specialize in, and that's just a really critical part of any Sean Payton offense. They love those short area slant targets, and Pat Bryant could immediately fill the role for this team there. And this is going to be a team, I think we all like the Broncos offense. They were good last season with a rookie quarterback. They added a good running back. They added Evan Ingram. And even if Evan Ingram's not great, he's still a huge upgrade over what they had last year. Like, this offense is going to be better this year than it was last year, and it was pretty dang good last season. So there's going to be a lot of value out of this offense, and like I said, there's a lot of ambiguity here. Pat Bryant has a clear shot to at least be the wide receiver 2 in this offense. And if he comes in and he's actually just a really good player, a really great fit for this offense, it's not impossible for him to come in and just be the wide receiver 1 on this team. He could easily end up being one of those guys that's just a huge surprise, currently being drafted as the wide receiver 74. I think there's a path towards him being a wide receiver 2 in fantasy this season. Of course, that requires him to be either a full-time number 2 wide receiver in the offense, or it requires him to actually pass Sutton. But I think that's within the range of outcomes. And when you're looking at guys that are being drafted this late, I don't think there are a whole lot of them that even have that kind of upside. So I think he needs to be mentioned. Again, he's probably not going to finish as a top 24 wide receiver, but I think he's going to be a really valuable flex asset. And if he can actually be as good as at least Sean Payton's talking about him as he is, there's going to be a really good opportunity here for him to come in and be just fantastic for fantasy. So don't forget about Pat Bryant, where he's being drafted. He's like free in drafts. He's going to be one of my favorite last round picks in fantasy this year, and I think there's a lot of upside there. So don't forget about him at all. And the last wide receiver we're going to talk about here is actually another rookie. So we're going 3 for 5, bringing up rookies. I didn't mean to do that, but this is a guy that I like quite a bit as well, and it's Jaden Higgins, who was drafted early in the second round this year by the Houston Texans. I believe he went 34th overall, and if you look at all like the athletic profile comps and everything, he actually profiles extremely similarly to Nico Collins. Very funny. Not really saying he's going to be as good as Nico, of course. Like, just athleticism doesn't tell the whole story by any means, but I think he's a really talented player. He's a guy that's going to be starting immediately on this team. I know a lot of people are really into Jalen Noel, but he profiles more as a slot wide receiver, and I think Christian Kirk's probably going to start the season as the starting slot wide receiver. You're going to have Jaden Higgins and Nico Collins on the outsides every single week, every single play, and this is an offense that we've seen be explosive before. I know they sort of regressed, if you want to say they did last season, but they're still a good team, still won a playoff game. They had, honestly, plenty of production from the wide receiver position. If you look early in the year prior to the injuries, Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs were both putting up monster numbers. The year before, Nico Collins and Tank Dell both put up monster numbers. So there's room for Nico Collins and one more wide receiver to be really good in fantasy. And I think Jaden Higgins could easily be that guy. This is a team that clearly believed in him. They clearly believed they needed to address their wide receiver room as well, taking 2 wide receivers pretty early in the draft this year, Jaden Higgins being the first of them. And that means that they want to play these guys. These are guys that, I mean, if you look at the end of last year, they were playing like Xavier Hutchinson, John Mechie. These are guys that shouldn't be regularly playing on the field in the NFL. So Jaden Higgins is a huge upgrade for him. He's going to help the offense as a whole. And if he ends up actually being really good, like there's an opportunity here for him to be a top 36 wide receiver right out the gate just because of the role he has in a good offense. And as the wide receiver 54 off boards, a high draft capital rookie wide receiver on a good offense, being drafted late, it's exactly the kind of risks I want to be taking in my fantasy drafts. You had, like last year, you had guys like Marvin Harrison, high-profile rookie wide receiver on a good offense. Those guys got drafted too high, and it makes it tough to find that upside. But if you look at the same guys like last year, you had Bryant, a high-drafted later first-round rookie wide receiver on a good offense, going in like the 7th or 8th round last year, ended up being one of the steals of the draft. And if Jaden Higgins can actually emerge and be a high-end talent, there's all the tools here, all the pieces that you could possibly ask for. So I like him quite a bit. He's pretty free in drafts right now, and I think the upside's certainly there as a guy that I'd expect to get better and better over the course of the season, and is going to have a ton of opportunity to impress us this year. So that'll do it for the 5 sleeper wide receivers I wanted to highlight. Again, if you had any guys that I didn't mention that you were looking to see here, let me know in the comments below. I love seeing any suggestions you guys have. Super fun to interact with you guys. It's one of my favorite parts of doing this. And hopefully you guys are enjoying the videos as well. There's going to be a quarterback and a tight end sleeper video coming out shortly as well. And then I also went over running backs a couple days ago. So if you haven't watched the running back video, I highly recommend you guys do that. Then if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, you really should. There's going to be 3 or more videos every single week the entire rest of the off season. There will be even more than that during the regular season. I'm going to be here all year long, and if you do stick around, I think we're going to win some championships together. It's a lot of fun, really trying to build a community here, and I just really appreciate all you guys, all the support. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully you want to stick around for the ride. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you made it through this video, hopefully I helped you out a little bit, so I highly recommend you just give it a thumbs up. It helps me out quite a bit, and yeah, really appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter @RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.